What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another weekly update. And what I like to do with these videos is provide you guys some events, possibly even earnings that are going on during the week and stocks that I am looking at throughout the week. Now, if that sounds like something you're interested in, I do daily updates as well to keep you informed and ready for the day, the week ahead. So let's go ahead right into state of the markets. This past week, we had the big event that we've been waiting for, essentially from the beginning of the year. We were waiting on Powell, the Fed, to essentially come in with some sort of rate raise. Now, the beginning of the year, the rates were essentially almost gauged, almost to a 100-point basis move. It fluctuated a lot. There was talk about, coming into this meeting that the bonds, the assets would completely stop. The Fed would completely stop purchasing assets, and that there would be at least a 25-point basis move. Again, that fluctuated a lot over the past couple months, but we came in, we hit 25-point basis, which was essentially right on par. But what has caused this market to essentially start going insane is the fact that the Fed continue to buy assets. They continue to buy the bonds. Now, what's intriguing is that our next Fed meeting is not until May. But being said, this kind of opens the door for the market to essentially start running again, start becoming very bullish. And we're starting to see that. Now, essentially, it could be a lot of different other things. This could be all shorts, essentially covering their position that's happened over the past week with all the massive selling. But ultimately, I think you have to look at what's going on with the Fed. That's what we waited for. That's what we got. We came in under what is expected, essentially because bonds are continuing to be purchased. Now, the Fed has to do this essentially because of the fact that there is still fear in the market because of the war with Russia and Ukraine. You still have a lot of not quite solid ground to stand on right now. And I think the Fed would have stopped purchasing assets had the war not started. Again, unforeseen event occurred. So now the Fed has to back the banks. We have to understand that if the Fed stops purchasing bonds, what is going to happen? What happens if everybody goes to the banks and tries to withdraw their money? Right, we could cripple the financial system if that happens because there is the fear of war currently going on. So we're going to wait until May to see if that's going to stop. Now, again, people are going to give their opinion. They're going to say, no, it's going to stop in May. People were going to thought it was supposed to start this past week, and it didn't. So that's what was a big surprising thing. And as you can see, just on the SPX, we've completely broken the wedge. On the daily, we finally broke that downward trend that we were going, essentially waiting for the Fed, waiting for something to happen. Now that's happened. We still have the war going on. We're still going to see results of that with the lockdowns in China, with essentially the sanctions that are going on with Russia. We're still going to see the impact that's going to have further down the road. And then we're going to see how fast the Fed are going to come in with rate raises. Because one thing we did point out when the Fed came out and started talking, people were scared because of the fact that the Fed seemed extremely hawkish, that they were looking for 1.9% by the end of year. So that would essentially indicate that at some point there's going to be a double rate hike at one of these meetings. So we have to take that into account. Even being said, the market may have priced in a 50-point basis move. It's still way over what we expected, but we are still purchasing bonds. That is a very bullish sentiment for the market, and that's what we're seeing thus far. I think we can still run. Are we going to hit all-time highs? I don't know. There are some other things that come into play. But that's how we are currently set up in the state of the market. Now, as far as this week, there's some earnings going on. I know Nike and Adobe have earnings this week, but I don't watch those. If those are the ones you like to watch, then by all means, do your thing. But for events, again, we have Russia and Ukraine. The two biggest things I'm watching here from Russia and Ukraine is if there is a ceasefire, which more than likely I don't see that anytime soon. There's a lot of talks about it, but not quite sure there. I mean, this can change at any moment. And essentially, where China is going to stand, is China going to side with Russia, or is China going to back off? Or they haven't really essentially said where they stood with Russia or against Russia. There's been mixed messages. So we really have to see what goes on there. And then this week we do have a lot of different data, but again, at this point, I don't think data is really going to matter or going to matter that much, because even if data and inflation seem really high, Powell's going to do his own thing. He's not going to hurry up and push the market because you still have the war. You still have that unforeseen event. And again, a ceasefire or China entering the war or whatever the case is can change the dynamic of the market. And so I think that's why that backstop is essentially there. So I don't see bond buying going away just automatically. But again, in 2 months, that could dramatically change. But we do have Powell on Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and he's speaking at a conference. Now, these conferences, it really doesn't matter. I mean, he could be talking about anything in general, just basic knowledge about the Fed, whatever the case is. But you have to understand that he's going to be fielding questions, and every time someone starts fielding questions, people are going to ask him and trying to pick about rate raises and, okay, well, what's your time frame? People still trying to field those questions. So he may say something. Typically, he's been pretty good. He's been pretty solid about what he says. He's been televising everything, I think, really well compared to what's going on. And he really hasn't deviated from that. So being said, we're going to have to see moving forward. We have a lot of different other data, but I don't think it's going to impact, right? I think whatever data comes out, you're going to get a quick move, and then that's going to be initially pretty much it at that point. Now, watch list, we got Tesla, Google Shop, AMD, Roblox, Square, Snap, Planter is what I'm watching. If this is a true reversal, these are the ones I want to watch first. Again, the top half are heavier weighted for me than the bottom half are here. And AMD is still kind of a wild card only because of sanctions and what's going on with China. That could fluctuate. So I'm kind of hesitant on this one, but I still really do like chips moving forward. So again, let's jump right into Bitcoin. Bitcoin doing very well over the weekend. It's actually started climbing on Friday. But again, I think with everything currently going on, the current sentiment of the markets, and people still worried about inflation, the mass adoption, there's just way too many people coming into crypto for it to start really tanking. I think past the 32 level, something I've been talking about. But I think we are very soon for this thing to start going parabolic again. I think it's only a matter of time. Stuff has started moving already this weekend. So that is definitely good to see. Tesla, everything very strong. I expected a pullback on Friday. Nothing even attempted to pull back. Everything that's been strong has essentially been running. Now, the reason why I kind of had the bottom half of that list, you got some better mid cap stocks, your Roblox, Square, Snap, Planter. I think you're having these massive moves on big tech, and I think we'll continue into this week with some massive moves into big tech, but I think you're going to start seeing some stalling maybe on the mid caps, small caps, and then at that point, I think it'd be good for entries. So we're kind of looking for laggers this week is what we're looking for. I know on Friday, Google was a major lagger, and then when Tesla started to stall here around the 900 mark, Google just took off, and then it continued to take off. There was very little pullbacks. I think we're going to kind of see a continuation of that. Do we get a somewhat of a pullback on Monday and then continue to run? So that's what I'm kind of looking for. I kind of really want Tesla to hold at 850. I'm kind of hoping for at least a pullback to 850. Do we go back down to 800? I don't really see that happening. Maybe 820. You might get a wick down to 820. But I think at this point, we have the 20 EMA sitting at the 906 mark here. Wouldn't actually be surprised if we reject coming into Monday and then kind of retest this 825 and then continue up. Again, you don't want this market just to go completely parabolic because it will just elevator down if it does continue to push just with a parabolic move up. So just be mindful of that and be very careful of that. So psychological levels, you're watching that 900, you're watching that 950, and you're watching that 1K mark. Again, I'm looking for any dips on Tesla to buy. So that's why I like Tesla. Again, it's been crawling back, and I think it's going to try to make back 2 months of the beat down it's had. And then after that point, start looking at other stuff. Google is another big one to watch. Like I said, Friday, it really kind of stalled. Like everything was pushing first thing in the morning, and Google just stalled, but then it got gas and it just continued to rock going in. So I'm kind of really watching this 50 mark, this 27. I think we could possibly visit this 27 mark coming Monday and see if we can hold that, or even if we gap above these two other 27.37 or 27.20. I think as long as we can hold either the 50 on the daily or the 20 on the weekly, we should be good to go. Now, typically what's going to happen is you'll hit that 20 and you'll pull back. But there's so much positive sentiment with the bond buying that it's going to be hard to tell if we'll get a pullback. Again, the market's been held down quite a bit for the past 2 months, waiting on the Fed, and it got answers. That's what the market was waiting for, was answers, and we got some answers. So definitely watching this again. Key level, if we can even hit the 26.45, would be awesome. As long as it continues to hold that range, essentially that's 200 on the daily. Again, Google doesn't typically float around that 200 daily, so to see it this low, we're kind of watching that level and then going from that point. And then I am watching SHOP is another big one. I'm watching this turning point. It did have a couple of days parabolic, so really looking for any kind of pullback. Watching that 20 EMA 650 mark. I don't know if we'll come back that far, but this thing can really start ripping. If you look at the daily, all these dailies almost look the same. We are coming into a second resistance here. So again, I won't be surprised if we try to come back to that 648 or 642. I think is really hopeful. I don't think we'll come down that low, but just watch this wedge on the daily and see if we can break this. Again, you got a lot of resistance here around that psychological 800. If we can break above that, I think this can really start getting gas. It was really beat down bad down to 500, especially this stock when they were giving target ranges of 2K not that long ago. So we want to see how this plays out going forward. So I definitely want to keep on watch. AMD, again on the daily, watching this break here. If we can get above essentially that 114 mark, go to the 116 mark, we could start really ripping on this. Again, you want to watch out for any kind of news with China. The semiconductors and sanctions could be a big issue moving forward. But, I think you can at least try to revisit the 140, the 150 mark easily for AMD. And like I said, the ones that really move are NVIDIA and AMD. And NVIDIA actually had a massive move on Friday, but it is coming into support at the 266 mark. So kind of, again, waiting for stuff to pull back to try to retest this level before continuing forward. Now, Roblox is the other one I do have. This thing is already starting to really make a rip here. Watching that 53 mark ultimately and see if, again, when we reject and come back down, possibly at around that 46 mark. If we can hit the 46 mark and start moving back up would be great. Again, I'm kind of watching this gap because if we can break the 54.30 mark, we could potentially try to fill this gap up to 66. Again, the average before this whole year really kind of started, Roblox was typically floating around that 72 mark. I think we're going to at least revisit that. So I think there's a lot of potential in Roblox and something to really be watching. SQ is another big one to be watching. I do really like this one. It has made a higher low. So as you can see here, you had a pump There's your higher low here. Now we have a higher high. So we're looking for that pullback on Monday. All these are starting to look the same, which is really good. If we can get a pullback to the 122 mark for an entry, I mean, you can even come down to the 113 mark as even a possibility. We're kind of watching these daily supports here at the 122. If we get a retest of that and a nice hold and start bouncing, again, you got a lot of room to start making up on some of these. And, you know, I had questions about Square and questions about Snap, but they came through with good earnings, and I think they can continue to start rocking back up. I think there were some questions, especially what Apple was doing, locking down their software or their devices. So it was harder for some of these companies to make money. Now being said, I think they're figuring it out very quickly, and so Snap showed that in their last earnings. So moving forward, I definitely want to start watching these, especially if we start reversing. And then, talking of which, is Snap. Snap is another big one to watch here. Now, I just really watching that 34.50 mark. I want to see if we can actually retest and hold that. If we can rehold that, we're going to revisit the 42, possibly 43. If we can break that, I think, again, this thing can run all the way back up. I think, you know, realistically, I think we still get back to that 50 mark. I think Snap is a really good company, especially if they got it figured out. But we want to watch and see if we can hold that level. We'll at least get the, you know, the 41 mark. If we can break that, or you're looking at the 53 mark. And so I think Snap normally has a cult following, and I think you'll start to see that here very quickly if the market does start reversing. Planter, I don't always like this stock because it doesn't move the greatest out of a lot of these, but it has broken support. So as long as you can hold that $12 mark, I think we're going to revisit the 14 mark. If we could break that roughly around that 15 mark, if we can break that mark, then, you know, we got some of these other key levels, the 16 and the 1840. I think a very strong possibility. I think what we're going to see is a massive run here in possibly April, and then in May, coming around earnings. You're going to come around earnings and Fed at the same time again. I think you're going to get some selling and probably some chop around that time until we hear from the Fed again, and then we start seeing sanctions and China lockdowns. We're starting to see how that affects the market at that point. So again, I think we might chop a little bit, sell a little bit, and then we'll continue just pushing forward for the remainder of the year. Get some earnings, and then we got elections mid-year, so you might get a little more volatility then. But then I think might be pretty bullish towards the end of the year. Especially seeing what I saw over the past couple of days. I think as long as those things that I've talked about, Russia and Ukraine, right, they play out, as long as we can get a ceasefire here sometime shortly, China doesn't decide to enter, I think we can start looking at possibly all-time highs again. Again, we started off with one of the worst years possible in a very long time. The past 2 months have been extremely rough, but I think we can change all that very quickly. So that being said, if you made it this far, remember to drop the like button. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.